On my journey to 2100 Rapid on chess.com, I discovered that strong chess players look at the board differently than those who are lower rated. And in this video, I'm going to share 5 middle game strategies that you can implement right now that will lead to more attacking, tactical victories. Rule number 1 is to be aggressive with pawn moves when your position is much better. Our model game is Pit Shark versus Floor 1934, and we pick up the game from this position where it's black to move and black captured on h3. Now, white should have played bishop to g2 here to evict the black queen away from its aggressive post. It's never a good idea to leave the enemy queen so close to your own king. But white didn't do this, and instead white decided to restore material equality by capturing on c6. Now this is a major mistake because after black takes back, white does get the pawn back, but you've left the queen on this aggressive post. Let's see how black was able to punish this. Well, it started with knight to d5. This creates a threat of capturing the bishop on e3. Let's just show that. If black is allowed to play this, then black will also win the pawn on g3, and black is totally winning. So white had to fight against that by playing queen to e1. So black is better here. Why is black better? Well, it's because of the aggressive placement of the black queen, the ability of black's knight to capture on e3 at any moment, and the fact that white's own queen had to go passive into defense. So in such a situation, that should activate the criteria for this rule, which is to be aggressive with pawns. And how was black able to do that? Well, it was with f5. This looks to pry open the white king's position even more, with f4 coming next move. Let's see that. Bishop to c5 was played, trying to create some counterplay on a different part of the board, but black just continued with f4 anyway. White captured on e7, and rather than recapture the bishop, black answered the threat with a bigger threat by capturing on g3. Because there's no time for this bishop to retreat or capture more material due to the threat of checkmate on h2. So white had to take f takes g3, but now black played one more move and white resigned, knight to e3. And now there's not any good way to stop the checkmate threat on g2. You can take a look at this yourself if you like, but white resigned. But the main point of the lesson is to understand the points at which you can break some of the rules, such as don't move pawns in front of your own king. The move f5, I mean, if you're a beginner or even if you're an intermediate level player, you may have something in your head along the lines of it's not a good idea to move pawns in front of your own king. Well, to become an advanced chess player, you need to know when it's correct to break the rules. And when your position is much better, as black's is here for the reasons already outlined, then pushing pawns in front of your own king can be justified, and that helped black secure a memorable victory in this game. Lesson 2 is to punish pawn grabbing. There's more to chess than just material considerations, and we're going to illustrate this in Esipenko versus Vallejo Pons 2023. Black to move here, and black played queen to c2. Now this threatens to win the white pawn on b2, and I think a lot of players here would play a direct defense, something like rook to b1. But this is very passive, and this is not how strong chess players think. Strong chess players are always thinking about counter-attacking. In this position, white understood that black had been slow with his development. The black king is still in the center after all. And so white played rook a to e1, giving up the pawn. Now black bravely or foolishly took on b2, and then we get to see how white was able to take advantage of this, starting with knight to e4. Now that attacks the black queen had to move, and then knight to d6 check. Because of the fork between the king and the rook, black really had to take back, white captured back as well, and now white actually has a threat in this position. Let's just show the threat. If black were to greedily grab another pawn, well, it's soon going to be game over after rook takes e6. If the rook is taken, then black is actually checkmated. And if the first rook sacrifice is not accepted and black plays the only other legal move, then we can see that black is not lasting long. There's threats on f7 and also the knight on d7 it's too much. Black can resign here. So in this position, black instead castled, and we get to see the point of white's play here with another forcing move, bishop to e7. Now, the most natural way of getting the rook out of danger is to play rook to e8. The game took a bit of a different course, but eventually the same kind of idea occurred. And we get to see the point of white's play, because knight to g5 now means that this pawn on f7 can't be defended, and if it advances, well then the pawn on e6 is lost, and again white is totally winning. In the game instead, after bishop to e7, black instead captured on d4, and then there was a recapture, then the rook moved away. There were a few more moves, but eventually we got to see the knight to g5 idea, and black had to give up the exchange, after which white was up material and went on to win. But this entire sequence, it began by punishing the pawn grabbing. The only way that the black queen could take that pawn was by exposing itself to attack, starting with knight to e4, and well, you saw the rest. A good idea to keep in mind, you don't always have to defend every pawn. Sometimes, especially when the enemy king is exposed like this, it can be better to let your opponent take time grabbing the pawn, and you use the opportunity to start an attack against the enemy king. If you're enjoying this video so far, go ahead and click the subscribe button. I do all kinds of content on chess, including tips on how to improve, reviews of master games, and plenty more. Lesson 3 is all about intermezzos, or in-between moves. Now these moves often come across as very surprising towards the opponent. They require a great deal of creativity, and for this reason, they're one of the hallmarks of really strong chess players. Let's see one in action. We've got a position from Dobias versus Podgorny, 1952. Black to move, and black played bishop to b7. And now white played a move which didn't seem possible at first glance, and it's the move d5. The reason it doesn't seem possible is because black has got that pawn advance so well covered. There's the bishop, the knight, the queen, and the pawn on e6 all covering the d5 advance, but white played it anyway. So, seeing a chance to win a pawn, black took on d5, probably expecting that white was going to take back on d5, after which, well, white is just down a pawn. But this is not what white had in mind. Instead, white played the intermezzo rook f to e1. This was the point. This is why white was willing to sacrifice the pawn, to open up the e-file. Now the threat is for white to take this bishop, and this bishop is actually responsible for guarding this knight on f6. In the game, black played h6, trying to distract one of white's pieces away. And white just took, so it was successful in distracting one of the queen and bishop away from the pressure against the knight. But this had different problems for black. Now black's king is becoming extremely exposed. Let's see a few more moves of the game and see how quickly the game can end when you surprise your opponent in this way. Well, knight to g4 was played, looking to make some trades. White retreated. There was some trades, but then there was the threat of checkmate on h7, so black had to go back. And then queen to h6, just getting the queen closer, cutting off any possible escape for the black king via f8. And now here came the star move of the game, a brilliant move, rook to e6. Incredible. Now the idea of this is that the knight on f6 is defending the checkmate threat on h7. So if the knight leaves its post, then it's game over. But if the rook is captured, well then there's a forced checkmate, which you can prove by calculation. Let's see, if the knight blocks this check, then it's again checkmate this way. And if the king goes back to g8, then this allows a discovered check, which is eventually going to lead to checkmate this way. But really the main point of showing this was the intermezzo. After the d5 advance, the idea was not to take back, it was to play the intermezzo, rook to e1. This was the source of all of black's problems, and this is why white was able to launch a devastating attack, which led to an eventual resignation. If you're a fan of the type of attacking chess showcased in these lessons, then I work with a small number of dedicated adult improvers to boost their results in the game. If you'd like my help, click the link in the description below. We can set up a time to chat, talk about what the program involves, and see if working together will be a good fit. With that, let's get back to the lessons. Rule 4 illustrates how to add pressure to pinned pieces. Now, Black had a pinned piece in Przpiorka versus Prokes, 1929. This knight is pinned in front of the queen with uncomfortable pressure from White's bishop. Now, it would certainly be wrong for White to liquidate this pressure. This may seem obvious to some people watching, but I see so many lower rated players making decisions like this which solves all of their opponent's problems for them. No, when your opponent has a problem like this pressure, you want to increase the problem. You want to dial up the pressure. And White was able to do that in the game with the move knight to e5. So now there's two pieces attacking the pinned knight. Obviously the knight can't move away because the queen would be lost. In the game, Black tried to defend with bishop to c8, but that allowed White to give up their rook for two minor pieces, which is a favourable trade of material from White's point of view. And the only other reasonable way to attempt to deal with this pressure is by taking the knight with the bishop. But this opens up the d file, and now the queen is also adding pressure to the pinned knight. And if you try and play bishop to c8, well then after rook to c7, there's no way to add more defenders. There's two defenders, and there's three attackers, and that knight is going to be lost. Now this method of adding pressure to pinned pieces is highly applicable in many different types of positions. So let's take a look at another one, this time from a sideline from Simagin versus Russo, 1948. White to move here, and White played queen to b2. Now that threatens checkmate on g7. So Black blocked with rook to f7, and now White played queen to a2, pinning the rook in front of the Black king. So that's a pinned piece. Now Black played queen to f5, trying to add an extra defender to the pinned piece, but now you can see how the tactics appear when pieces are pinned and pressure is added to them. With the move knight to e5, very strong, because if the knight is taken, then it results in the loss of the rook and eventually the game in pretty short order. So add pressure to pinned pieces. A lot of tactical opportunities can spring from these, as we've seen in the last two examples. Rule 5 is to build the mating net. This mindset is often essential to finish off an attack against the enemy king in the most accurate way. To illustrate this, we've got a position from near the end of the game, Trofimov versus Middlegame, 1994. Now a couple of things should stand out to you about this position. Number one is that Black has an extra rook, so Black has extra material. But number two is that Black's king is very exposed. White can move this knight away and reveal a check from the dark squared bishop. So the Black king is in the line of fire of a discovered check. Now, I think a very common mistake that you could see at lower levels would be to give this check straight away. White's mindset could be, I'm down material, I need to win some of that material back. But after king to g7 and, okay, winning some of the material back, Black is still up material, but now White's attack is over. And in fact, with all these queenside pieces undeveloped, Black should go on to win this. So what do we do instead? Well, in the starting position, we build the mating net. This is the point of this rule. So White's problem is that the Black king can escape via g7. So with the move played in the game, queen to e5, it forced resignation, because now the discovered check from the knight is much stronger. And in fact, just about any move that White plays will lead to checkmate. There is one way for Black to save checkmate for a couple more moves, and it's with the move queen to f6. But then after knight to e6 check, well, the only way really to stop checkmate is with g5, and then bishop takes g5, forks the king and the queen, and well, White will go on to win this because of the extra material. So this mindset of not giving the immediate check is Again, one of the hallmarks of a really high quality chess player. It's very tempting to reveal the check straight away, double check, winning back the rook, but actually checkmate into the game. So checkmate is what we should be aiming for, and so building the mating net to cut off any chance of the black king getting away is the way that you want to play a position like this one. Now that you know all about these attacking chess strategies, click here to further your education by learning all about the checkmating patterns. This will make sure that when the opportunity arises, you'll be prepared to finish the game off.